Let's do it, Steve.
Hi, everybody. Come over here if you would. Welcome. My name's, come on, come closer. I'll have to show you some things and you'll be too far away. I know we can't get too close. My name's Steve. I look like this. And I'm a student of Ikebana, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to study with teachers in both schools. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I want to start with an idea. Years ago, I used to teach dance history. And so for the first lesson, I'd pass out pens and paper because dancers never had them. And I said, write down how dance began. And you got these wonderful things like an ancient queen liked movement and she did this, that, and the other. But one student wrote, dance began when I entered the studio. And I thought, wow. So I invite you to have Ikebana begin, whether you've seen it a lot or seldom, right when you look at a piece. That's actually when it begins, that experience. So Ikebana is really rich in history, in detail, in dates, in personalities, in concepts, in philosophies, but it really boils down to what you perceive when you look at something. So all the people who do Ikebana art are putting something together in order to share their experience of nature and the choices they make with you. And then you have to do the other part, otherwise the circuit doesn't close. So this show is special in a way that if you were to go to a museum and you saw Dutch masters like Rembrandt and Vermeer next to Picasso and Braque, because they're all artists, they all use natural materials, pigments, oils, canvas made from cotton and linen, and then they put those things together in order to have an image, something for you to engage with, something for you to perceive. So in the same way, Ikebana artists take things from nature, they take them apart, they put them back together and present them to you in a context that hopefully you can perceive things in a little different way. So please invite yourself to have your own experience. Whatever else you hear or see or whatever, have your own experience with that phenomenon that's in front of you. So Ikebana began in Japan about 500 AD. Its origin started a little bit before that. A lot of influences came from Korea and from China and originally from India, because that's where Buddhism and Hinduism then migrated, the philosophies migrated through those countries and also down towards Southeast Asia. So originally, offerings were made by people taking something that they connected with in nature, flowers. All cultures, there's a connection with flowers and beauty, and offering it on a shrine or a place that's sacred. So originally, people piled them up, just like we can do now, put roses in a bowl, put them on a table. But when it got to Japan, there was already a culture there that had a philosophy of kamis. Kamis are spirits throughout the world and everything. And so in order to celebrate something or in order to have a fortunate event, you would encourage them to come and gather. And the way they did that was by taking branches, specifically pine and others similar that were long-lived, and they put them out in front of a shrine or in front of a house if there was a birth or a wedding. And that was a signal for the kamis to come and gather. So by the time Buddhism came to Japan, there were these two concepts, these heaped up flowers and then these branches. So for the first time, as far as we know in world culture, those two became together. So we have mass and we also have lines, okay? So things in Buddhism can get very elaborate. And so for the next about 800 years, things evolved and evolved and evolved. So the idea for something like this is very elaborate, is that it's a celestial garden. It's the idea of perfection. And they worked a philosophy with it, so each line is like heaven, man, earth, and then water, all the elements and so on. Things that are coming, things that are going, things that are invisible. So while people are assembling these things, there are very specific ways to make each part of the material distinct, so they're not mushed together. You can actually go through and pick out each decision that a person has made. This then became more simplified into a 5-line arrangement. Then about the time that Zen Buddhism really became popular in Japan in the 1500s, Zen actually comes from Chan in China and Son in Korea, and then Zen in Japan. And what it simply means is sitting meditation. So the idea behind sitting is that you disconnect from all sorts of other things and you sit. And when you start to connect again, you disconnect. So you start to see what appears before you. So out of that came all the arts, like the tea ceremony, like the rock gardens, the plantings, and so on. It's a simplified and encouraging support for the mind to simplify itself and to become more centered. So there was a Zen priest named Sen no Rikyu, and he simplified things. Instead of having these very elaborate arrangements, he took things that were very natural. And you've probably heard the term wabi-sabi. Wabi means kind of piquant, sentimental. And sabi means basic, humble. So instead of having huge urns and vases, some of which we can see representatives here in this show, instead of having those exclusively, he began to use bamboo. And from that came all these forms you find in bamboo, where vases are made, things are cut out, they're bent, they're grown certain ways, they're put together, and there'll be some examples here too, I'm sure. So his idea was to cut back to basics. So he simplified things to 3 lines. And almost all the schools today have as their basis this basic proportion. And unfortunately, it's not the golden mean that we use in the West, that the Greeks came up with. But it's a proportion that holds pretty true. So there's a first line, and that's called shin, which means first. And it's also referred to as heaven because it's closer to heaven. And then the second is called, in Senke, it's called nagashi, and in Sugetsu, it's called soi. That's the second one. So it's like roughly 2/3 of the first line. This is the container, it's my hand. And notice it's also coming out toward you. Then the third line is called hikai, and that's earth. So you have heaven, human, and earth. So if this is on a shrine, this arrangement sits on the Buddha's left side. If you reverse these 2 lines, then it sits on the Buddha's right side. The reason these things come out is to give it dimension, and also because almost always these arrangements were on a shrine or they were in a takanoma, an alcove in a Japanese home. So you wouldn't get up beside them, you'd be right in front of them. So several of these pieces will have that kind of aesthetic, that they're to be viewed head on. Others are made to be walked around. So you can check that out for yourself too. What else? So, Sen no Rikyu then begat a whole bunch of students, and they had schools and students and so on. So through the centuries then until the 1700s, there was an innovator who then simplified things again and actually founded what became the Senke school. So the name Senke goes back to Sen no Riku, but it also comes forward into the 1900s. There was a woman who became the head of the Senke school. Her name was Kani Shogi, and she arrived in the US in 1921 in Seattle. She married an Episcopal priest, a Japanese Episcopal priest, and they came here for the Japanese community. So she brought her school with her, and she began teaching Senke technique, Senke school principles in 1922. So from her then, another teacher was designated head teacher, or Iamoto is the name, the person who kind of holds the responsibility for the school. And then the current one is Karen Nagai, who I don't see here, but the head teacher is Linda Vane, who's out there in the hall in the blue shirt. And so she's the one who's in charge of keeping the flame burning on what the Senke principles are and what they aren't. Sugetsu then actually became a school in 1929. So that was the time after Picasso and Braque and so on were turning things upside down in the visual art world. So Sofu Teshigahara was the man who studied with his own father, who was founded a school, and he didn't want to do traditional things anymore. He wanted to do something that was very much like modern art. So he broke away. His father disowned him because he thought he was disobedient. He was supposed to carry on the school. And instead, he founded his own school with different principles. So what he did was take things apart, put them back together, try this, try that, keep challenging all the traditional rules of Ikebana, and then seeing what you have to do then to make something work or not. So in Sugetsu school, you'll still start with the same principles, and then you play around with different things. So you'll find that happening when you look at the labels. All of the labels say who did the piece, and they also say what school it is. So think that Senke tends to be modern, and that, Sugetsu tends to be modern, and Senke tends to be more traditional. That said, sometimes you can look at a Rembrandt, and it's so minimal that almost all you see is space and planes. Or sometimes you can see a Braque that's so complex that it really begins to tell you a story. But what do I mean by taking something apart? Picasso would do a painting, for instance, and he'd take a nose and show it to the side, and at the same time he'd take this ear and put it there, which you wouldn't see in nature, and then I'd show the chin underneath. So you're kind of looking at all these composite parts from a new way. That's what he wanted to do, say, let's shake this up. So in the same way, if you'll come with me over here, we have the same materials for two schools. Dean Sensei, back there in the white mask, did this piece, Senke school. I did this one. And they're both working with horsetail ferns. So I was at a school once, or I was at a show once where there was a piece like this. I think maybe Linda Vane might have done it. And somebody said, well, you take things apart and you put them back together again. So that's very much abstract. And if you keep that in mind, well, let me finish here. But if we take the pieces apart, I actually wired these, and then I can make them do things that the plant would never do in nature. Right? It doesn't even evoke nature. This, to me, and you make up your own mind, evokes a setting, a place, a time, a feeling, that you could go out and in a magical world, you'd see something like that growing there. It's a perfected and inferring kind of piece of art. This one, though, is like, okay, more playful. What do we do with it? How can we change that? But both of them should have some principles for your eye to engage it and not get stuck. If your eye goes to something, say, oh, then maybe it's not for you. But if a piece works well for you, your eye usually can play around with it, come back, go to different parts of it, go around. So I encourage you, when you look at all these pieces, let your eyes circle, see how it goes. One wonderful teaching that Linda Vane gives is you should be able to have the wind blow through your piece. It shouldn't be so massed, so concentrated that it stops your eye and stops your perception. If you come over here for just a minute, oh, sorry. This is why we do a first tour. These two then, this is Linda Vane's Senke piece, very traditional in a brass container with a die underneath, which is similar in a way to having a frame, an ornate frame, something that shows up to support the creation. And this is by Charles here, the tallest guy in the room, but they're using the same material. Anybody recognize what it is?
Scotch broom?
Yes, Scotch broom. Yeah. So here you can start to see three elements, but here are the three lines I was talking about. And if you look at them technically, one comes to one shoulder, one comes toward the other shoulder. If you'll come on over here for a last look. This is what I was thinking about when I said that Sugetsu students said, oh, you deconstructed it. Because the story I heard from Linda Vane was, oh, this is a very traditional piece. It's actually three arrangements in one. You have the tall, the medium, and the short, tall, medium, and short, tall, medium, and short. Same thing here, tall, medium, and short, but they're cut. They don't grow that way, so why is it that way? Well, traditionally, that's when people would go out to cut reeds to make mats. Some would grow back. So it depends on your mind. Is somebody deconstructing something, or are you showing something very traditional with a story? Yeah? So let's look at one more here. And you don't have to stand in a row. Everybody stand away. You're all looking at it from a different point of view. I suggested that you're all looking at it with incredibly different visual baggage. Everything you've looked at in your life, you bring in your mind when you look at this. Every tree you've seen, every plant, every thought that you've had about being around a tree, about being around color, about being around line, about the materials, about glass, about wood. So when you look at this, what do you see? What's going on here? There are no right answers. There are thousands of answers. Somebody give me one. Well, I see a big green leaf. Oh, thank you. Well, I see 3 flowers of it. Well, thank you. What else do you see?
Harmony.
Say again? Harmony. Tell me more about that. How do you see harmony?
The curves and the around it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And maybe curves here, too. And maybe curves here, too. Maybe. What else do you see?
I see movement and flow.
Okay. Tell me about, where for you does the movement start?
Well, depends on where you want to start. It could be from any spot.
And the movement still happens.
Yeah,
So it's not necessarily sequential. It's
yeah.
all happening at once. What else do you see?
I think it's just the three different elements that we talk about, is, heaven and earth, and then they're there. There's the flowers, a leaf, and then stems underneath.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of balances out for me.
Yep, there's balance. Balance is a very good way to talk about Ikebana. Proportion is a good way. Another way that Senke, and especially Charles, emphasizes is line, space, and mass. Those three elements. So if you want to take that as a template and look at a piece and say, where's the line, where's the space, where's the mass? Yeah. Another one that Linda always talks about is dimension, that something isn't flat, but you have a sense of forward and back, forward and back. What else do you see?
It's just a pleasing composition. It brings you to the center, but then it also brings you out to the edges and back.
So there's movement in and out for you? Yeah? Yeah. Two other things.
Texture. There's the texture
Texture.
between the branches and the leaves and the smoothness of the flower.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. So what we're doing is part of a process. It's almost meditative viewing. And the idea is the more you allow yourself to sit there and relax and engage it, the more you begin to see. And it's especially rich if you do it with somebody else and you start exploring, seeing what's there. What do you engage with? And that way you get somebody else's perspective too and see things in the way that you haven't before. So I encourage you, if you see any of the teachers I pointed out, to please ask them any questions. Is that okay, teachers? Okay. Or if you see students who happen to be by their piece, ask them maybe how they came up with that, why they made those decisions. I had a fellow student who said, I'm exhausted after every class. All you do is stand there and make decision after decision after decision. So I think some of us can relate to that. Yeah. So that's about it for my spiel. Any questions that I can answer quickly? Okay. Well, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy it. Two other.